In the first month of the season, the Houston Rockets started off red hot, with the highest offensive rating in the NBA. But over the last 5 games without any major injuries or roster changes, their offense has fallen off a cliff. So the question is, what happened? Is it them not having a true point guard, a cold shooting stretch, or is their play style handicapping their offense? In this video, we're going to look at their entire roster and offensive process to try to figure out what exactly is going on. Now, with Houston's half-court offense, a big bulk of what they do runs through Alperen Sengun. As a center, his game is pretty versatile. When playing one-on-one in the post, his physicality, footwork, and touch makes him really tough to deal with. Plus, he has the footwork and ball control to attack off a live dribble from the perimeter. And those guard skills also allow him to run some pick and roll from beyond the three, where he can both turn the corner as a scorer and make the right play as a passer. Having a center as your primary ball handler can make your offense run a little more fluid too. Look how he's first initiating a post up, then goes right into a dribble handoff with an empty corner. And that gets 2 on the ball, a paint touch, and a dime to the baseline cutter. So in general, lots of Houston's offense stems from these Sengun post-ups, and ideally they try to space the floor with shooters around him, so if there's any kind of help, these turn into routine spray-out threes. However, the issue is, the Rockets often have 1 or 2 non-shooters on the court with him, so the spacing often gets pretty clunky. They often have possessions like this, where there's a big on the opposite block, with Alperen Thompson also spotting up in the opposite corner. And with this setup, it makes it very easy for the defense to load up from the weak side, which then causes Alperen to force things through 2 or 3 defenders. And this leads us to a big issue with Alperen's game, and that's once he gets outside the paint, his efficiency takes a nosedive. So far this year, he's shooting under 40% on all his floaters and hook shots, and under 35% in the mid-range. That inefficient scoring on longer twos is a bad combo with this roster, because again, with these jumbo lineups, they're often funneling 3 or 4 defenders in the paint, which forces a lot of these pushed out looks. So while Alperen does have a lot of juice as a post scorer, and can pass the ball from every spot on the floor, that lack of efficient scoring from outside the paint does put a cap on how reliable he can be as the primary engine of an offense. Now the next guy we have to zoom in on is Kevin Durant, and at this point I think we all know what he brings to the table. In kind of the inverse way from Sengun, he's an elite scorer from outside the paint. If he gets any catches from below the arc, that ability to turn and rise up is still one of the most unstoppable shots in the league right now. And even off the bounce, Durant still has the handle and control to work to spots and rise up. Plus, he can also take advantage of mismatches. But at the same time, this 37-year-old version of KD does have a lot of vulnerabilities. First, I think his quickness off the bounce is pretty much gone. What we've been seeing a lot of is teams will match him up with shorter, smaller, and physical wing/guard defenders. And these guys can really get underneath and bother him. And sure, while he does have the option to always turn and rise up from over the top, many of these looks are off balance and out of rhythm. And granted, because he is a really talented shot maker, he can often work around this. But at the same time, lots of these looks are really difficult. And if you have a heavy shot diet of contested pull-up 2s and 3s, there's also going to be a lot more variance on a night-to-night basis. And that's what we saw last night against OKC, where Durant went 7 for 23 from the floor. In the half court, Durant also has a lot of responsibilities as a passer. And with this part of his game, I do have some mixed feelings. First, out of pick and roll, I think he's more than capable of making the right play. First, Durant's obviously very experienced and can read the floor well. In pick and roll, he can find the roller with tight pocket passes, or use that length to find windows from over the top. And Durant can also use that size to counter double teams, where if the defense puts 2 on the ball, he pretty much always has the size to pick up and sky the ball over. KD also has a pretty good feel of the second side too. He isn't going to manipulate the defense and spoon feed his teammates wide open looks, but he does have the feel to make the right play, which is enough to create open shots or scrambles. So while Durant does have the tools and feel to be a solid all-around passer, I still don't think it's ideal for him to be tasked as the primary decision maker. Off the bounce, he's very prone to live ball turnovers, especially with those quicker and shorter defenders on him. And in pick and roll, he'll often force the issue on really tough deliveries. So from a bird's eye view, Durant's still a really good shot creator, scorer, and can play make pretty well out of pick and roll. But with the way his game is built right now, I don't think he has enough ball security to be the head of an offense. So this now brings us to Alperen Thompson, and from an athletic and talent standpoint, I think Alperen is for sure a top tier prospect in the league. But the thing is, he still doesn't address Houston's main issues. First, I think the best thing Thompson does for Houston is use that rim pressure to collapse the defense and create spray out threes. The guy can pretty much get in the lane at will, which is enough to collapse the defense and create routine kickouts. And because of that burst off the bounce, he can often create breakdowns without getting below the arc. On this pick and roll here, look how he pulls two towards the ball, and that's enough to create a scramble and get a dunk at the rim. But the thing is, while Thompson is a freak athlete when coming downhill, I don't think he's great at reading or processing the game yet. For every good pass he makes in the paint, there's also 2 or 3 plays where he'll throw himself up into traffic. And this is where talent can be a double-edged sword. On one end, Thompson is one of the most physically gifted slashers in the league. But then on the other end, there's lots of possessions where he's forcing the issue through 2 or 3 bodies. And the big elephant in the room is that Alperen is also a zero threat from outside the paint. The mid-range game has gotten a little bit better, but the 3-point shot is not there. And that just generally makes him a lot easier to guard off the bounce, where teams can sag back and pick and roll or isolation and funnel him into more drives and traffic. So while Thompson does have enough skill and tools to provide offense as a point guard, I still think he provides his most value cutting off the ball. Because from these spots, you're maximizing his athletic tools and not allowing his limitations as a playmaker and shooter to be a factor. Now, before we dive into how Houston has tried to address their main course problems, the last guy I want to look at is Jabari Smith, because he's low-key been the X factor. First, besides KD, I think Jabari has the best tools as a spot-up shooter. He's got good size, can get into his jumper quickly, and he has been accurate over the years. But Jabari through the last 8 games has gone cold from behind the line. And simply put, if he's not making outside shots, that only amplifies Houston's issues. Now, as an offensive piece, Jabari is much more than just a spot-up shooter. Off the bounce, he has the size and feel to attack mismatches in the post, and he can pretty effectively generate over-the-top jumpers. Off the ball, he can also find the soft spots on the floor and cut into open space. Plus, the Rockets will use him a lot as a screener, where he can both pick and pop or slip towards the basket. And while rolling, he does have a pretty good skill set, where he can stop short and pop jumpers, or put the ball down and put pressure on the rim. But the thing is, Jabari as an off-the-dribble creator still has a lot of room for improvement. While putting it down, he still has a hard time processing the entire floor. He'll completely miss the help side rotating over towards the ball, or be a few steps late on passing reads. Ideally for Smith, you kind of want him to fill in the blanks for you offensively. Lots of spot-up threes, attacking closeouts, or hunting mismatches in the mid-post. But as a ball handler and passer right now, I don't think he has enough to address Houston's main issues. So with the Rockets' core of Sengun, Durant, Thompson, and Smith, those guys have their own unique set of skills. But at the same time, they also have pretty substantial flaws. Sengun is inefficient from 10 feet and out. Durant is still very turnover prone. Thompson can't shoot and is still developing his basketball feel, while Smith right now doesn't have the game to shoulder a lot offensively. Now, the big talking point that keeps coming up is that Houston needs a point guard, and I think there's for sure some truth behind that. Because what we're seeing right now with the 4 players that we just went over is that they all have shared responsibilities with ball handling and decision making. And for each of their games to be maximized, you ideally don't want them quarterbacking the offense from beyond the 3. Now, the hope was that second-year guard Reed Shepherd would be that guy, and he has shown some really good scoring flashes throughout the season. He's a legit pull-up shooter from range, plus he can generate some offense from below the arc, with an in-between pull-up and floater game. But I still think Reed's feel of the game has a long way to go. Again, with the ball in his hands right now, I do think he's a pretty talented scorer, but his ability to process the game and create breakdowns isn't there yet. So in essence, what the Rockets need is somebody who can both handle the ball and create advantages. At any given moment, they always have plenty of talent on the floor, but because of the way their offense is structured, they're often forced to create against a set defense, which then leaves their team as a whole having a really difficult shot dive. So obviously, them having a veteran point guard like Fred VanVleet back in the lineup would make things a lot easier. Thompson could go back to slashing off the ball. Smith would get a lot more clean looks from the perimeter. Sengun can play around the basket more. Plus Durant would get more catches from below the arc and less responsibility with the ball in his hands. But the thing is, with the way this team's built, I don't think they're meant to have this super pretty half-court offense. What's made this team successful is their defense and rebounding. In general, if they want to go double big, with a non-shooting slasher on the court, you're pretty much always going to have a clunky half-court offense, even with the most experienced point guard out there. So going forward for Houston, I don't think they're ever going to have a great half-court offense, even if they do acquire some more depth at the backcourt position. Again, the foundation of this team is going to be their defense and rebounding. And like we've seen throughout this year, that by itself has been enough to give every team some problems. But the question is, can they overcome their offense's limits come playoff time?